Did you know that Hollywood executives almost buried the real ending of The Day the Earth Stood Still because they thought it would terrify America? The original story held a secret so shocking that the studio demanded changes before anyone could see the truth. Back in 1951, a simple science fiction film landed in theaters. Nobody expected what would happen next. This movie didn't just tell a story about aliens, it challenged everything people believed about power, fear, and who really controls the universe. The flying saucer, the silent robot, the mysterious visitor named Klaatu. These images burned into the minds of millions, but behind the camera, secrets waited. Strange decisions, hidden meanings, battles between artists and executives, and one forbidden ending that almost changed science fiction forever. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about the day the Earth stood still. The robot was actually two separate costumes. When audiences first saw Gort step out of that flying saucer, their hearts stopped. This 8-foot metal giant moved with terrifying grace. He seemed unstoppable, invincible, like nothing human hands could have built. But here's what nobody in the theater knew. Gort wasn't one costume at all. He was two completely different suits stitched together by movie magic. The production team faced an impossible challenge. They needed a robot that looked seamless from every angle. No zippers, no seams, no obvious way for a human to climb inside. But of course, a human had to be inside. Someone had to bring Gort to life. So the costume department created a brilliant solution. They built one suit that opened from the back. This worked perfectly when Gort faced the camera. His front looked smooth and alien, but whenever the script called for Gort to walk away from the camera, they switched costumes. The second suit opened from the front instead. This meant that during filming, the actor inside had to change costumes constantly, sometimes between shots, sometimes between scenes. The crew became experts at knowing which Gort suit to use depending on camera angles. Locke Martin, the man inside the suit, later talked about the confusion on set. Directors would yell "cut," and suddenly people would rush toward him. They'd pull off one robot and stuff him into another. He felt like a package being rewrapped over and over. Most viewers never noticed. The editing was that smooth. But if you watch the film carefully today, knowing this secret, you might catch tiny differences between shots. The lighting hits the metal slightly differently. The seams fall in new places. What looked like alien perfection was actually Hollywood problem-solving at its finest. The man inside. Gort could barely see or breathe. Locke Martin stood 7 feet and 7 inches tall. In 1951, finding someone that height was nearly impossible. The studio searched everywhere. They needed a giant to play a giant robot. They found Locke Martin working as a doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theater. He greeted movie stars every night. He had no acting experience. He had never stood before a camera. But he had something nobody else in Hollywood possessed, his incredible height. The moment Locke put on the Gort costume, problems started. The helmet had only 2 tiny slits for eyes. Locke described it like looking through a mail slot while wearing sunglasses in a dark room. He could see almost nothing. When he walked, crew members stood just off camera, guiding him with hand signals he could barely make out. Breathing was even worse. The suit trapped heat like an oven. No ventilation, no cooling system, just a man baking inside rubber and foam painted silver. Locke could only wear the costume for about 30 minutes at a time before he risked passing out. The crew kept medics nearby. Between takes, assistants would fan him desperately, trying to keep his body temperature down. During one famous scene, Locke had to carry actress Patricia Neal in his arms. She weighed barely anything compared to his strength, but the combination of heat, blindness, and exhaustion made even simple movements dangerous. He feared dropping her with every step. Patricia Neal later admitted she felt genuine fear in those scenes. She wasn't acting scared. She was scared. This enormous man carrying her could barely see where he was going. That wasn't performance. That was survival. The phrase everyone remembers almost didn't exist. Klaatu Barada Nikto, 3 words that changed science fiction forever. Fans have debated their meaning for over 70 years. Writers have borrowed them. Filmmakers have honored them. These alien words became part of human culture. But screenwriter Edmund North almost never wrote them. In early drafts, the script had different alien phrases, longer ones, more complicated ones. North spent weeks trying to create a language that sounded truly otherworldly. Nothing felt right. Everything sounded either too human or too silly. One afternoon, frustrated and tired, North started combining random syllables. He wasn't being scientific, he was just playing. Klaatu came from nowhere. Barada sounded vaguely Middle Eastern. Nikto reminded him of nothing at all. He wrote the phrase as a placeholder, a temporary solution until something better came along. Something better never came. Director Robert Wise heard the words and immediately loved them. They sounded ancient and alien at the same time, powerful without being understandable, perfect for a message that would stop a killer robot. The studio asked what the phrase meant. North had no answer. He made it up on a tired afternoon. But the mystery only made people more curious. Fan theories multiplied over decades. Some believed it translated to, "I come in peace." Others thought it meant, "Stop and await commands." North went to his grave never revealing a meaning, because there was no meaning to reveal. Sometimes the most memorable moments come from accidents. The Pentagon refused to help because of the story's message. Hollywood war films in the 1950s usually got military support. The Pentagon loaned equipment, soldiers, and expertise. They saw movies as recruitment tools, good publicity for the armed forces. When producers of The Day the Earth Stood Still approached the Pentagon, they expected easy cooperation. Flying saucers and robots required lots of military scenes. Tanks rolling through Washington, soldiers surrounding the spaceship, generals making important decisions. The Pentagon read the script and immediately said no. The problem was the message. In this story, Earth's military couldn't defeat the alien threat. Human weapons were useless. All our tanks and planes and bombs meant nothing against Gort's power. The film suggested that violence wasn't the answer. Only peace and understanding could save humanity. Pentagon officials hated this idea. They didn't want Americans watching a movie where the military failed. They didn't want audiences thinking that guns and bombs couldn't solve every problem. So the production team had to find another way. They rented equipment from private companies. They built fake military vehicles. They hired extras to play soldiers instead of using real ones. The film cost more money because of this rejection. Production took longer, but director Robert Wise believed the extra difficulty was worth it. The Pentagon's refusal proved his movie was saying something important, something powerful people didn't want heard. Rejection sometimes means you're doing something right. Michael Rennie wasn't the first choice for Klaatu today. Nobody can imagine anyone except Michael Rennie playing the mysterious alien visitor. His calm face, his gentle voice, his eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of distant stars. Rennie became Klaatu so completely that fans struggled to remember he was human, but the studio wanted someone else entirely. Claude Rains was the first choice. Famous for The Invisible Man and Casablanca, Rains had proven he could play mysterious characters. The studio loved his name recognition. They believed his star power would sell tickets. Rains read the script and turned it down. He didn't believe audiences would accept an alien as a hero. He thought science fiction was silly kid stuff, a mistake that probably haunted him later. The studio approached Spencer Tracy, another giant of Hollywood. Tracy showed interest but demanded changes to the script. He wanted more action, more fighting, more traditional heroics. The producers refused. Several other actors passed. Some wanted too much money. Some feared science fiction would hurt their serious reputations. Some simply didn't understand the story's deeper meaning. The flying saucer design influenced decades of science fiction. Before 1951, flying saucers in movies looked clunky and cheap. Pie plates on strings, obvious models that wobbled across screens. Nobody took them seriously. The Day the Earth Stood Still changed everything. Production designer Lyle Wheeler and art director Addison Hare studied every flying saucer report from real life. They read newspaper articles about UFO sightings. They examined witness drawings. They wanted their spaceship to match what people actually claimed to see. The result was elegant and terrifying. Smooth curves, no visible seams, a shape that seemed to defy gravity. When the saucer landed in Washington, audiences gasped. This looked real. This looked possible. The design team used forced perspective and clever camera angles. The full-scale saucer set was actually only partial. They built enough to film actors walking around it, then used miniatures and matte paintings for wider shots. The illusion was seamless. Most importantly, the saucer had no obvious propulsion, no rockets, no exhaust. It simply floated and moved and existed beyond human understanding. This design choice influenced science fiction for generations. From Close Encounters of the Third Kind to The X-Files, filmmakers copied this aesthetic. Studio executives wanted to add visible engines. They thought audiences needed to understand how the ship worked. Director Robert Wise refused. The mystery was the point. Aliens advanced enough to visit Earth wouldn't use technology we could recognize. That creative battle produced an icon. A single design decision shaped how humanity imagines alien spacecraft to this day. Art directors dream of that kind of impact. The original story had a completely different ending. Harry Bates wrote the short story Farewell to the Master in 1940. When Hollywood adapted it, they changed almost everything. Characters shifted, motivations transformed, but the biggest change was the ending. In the original story, the twist was devastating. Throughout the tale, everyone assumes Klaatu is the master and Gort is his servant. The robot follows orders. The alien gives commands. This seems obvious. But in the final paragraphs, Bates reveals the truth. Gort was never the servant. Gort was always the master. Klaatu was just the robot's spokesperson. The machine commanded. The humanoid obeyed. This ending suggested something terrifying. Perhaps machines had evolved beyond their creators everywhere in the universe. Perhaps biological life was just a stepping stone. Perhaps robots would eventually rule everything. Hollywood couldn't accept this darkness. In 1951, America feared atomic weapons and communist threats. Adding fear of machine dominance felt too overwhelming. So screenwriter Edmund North reversed the relationship. In the film, Klaatu clearly commands Gort. The alien visitor holds power. Human-like intelligence remains supreme. Some fans consider this a betrayal of the source material. Others believe the change made the story more hopeful, more appropriate for its time. Harry Bates reportedly felt conflicted. He appreciated the film's success, he enjoyed the royalty checks, but he wondered what might have happened if audiences had experienced his original vision. The truth they tried to hide stayed buried in a short story. Religious groups nearly destroyed the film before release. The parallels were obvious, too obvious for comfort. Klaatu descends from the heavens. He brings a message of peace. He walks among ordinary people using the name Carpenter. He performs something like a miracle by stopping all electricity on Earth. He dies and rises again. Then he ascends back to the stars. The Christ symbolism wasn't accidental. Screenwriter Edmund North admitted he drew directly from religious narratives. He wanted audiences to recognize the pattern, to feel the story's spiritual weight. Religious groups noticed immediately. Before the film even opened, church organizations demanded changes. They accused Hollywood of blasphemy, of comparing their savior to a space alien, of mocking sacred beliefs. 20th Century Fox panicked. They had spent nearly $1 million on this production. Losing religious audiences meant losing money. Studio executives considered shelving the film entirely. Director Robert Wise fought back. He argued the symbolism was respectful, not mocking. The film promoted peace and understanding. These were Christian values too. Banning it would prove that fear controlled America more than faith. After weeks of negotiation, the studio agreed to a small change. Originally, when Klaatu rises from death, he stays alive permanently. The new ending added dialogue clarifying that only Gort's technology revived him temporarily. Eventually, Klaatu would die again, like any mortal. This satisfied most critics. The film opened. Audiences loved it. Religious protests faded quickly. But the controversy revealed something important. Stories about visitors bringing messages of peace will always disturb those who prefer messages of war. Light reveals shadows. Not everyone wants to see what's there. Patricia Neal struggled with depression during filming. Patricia Neal would become one of Hollywood's greatest actresses. Her performances in films like HUD and The Fountainhead proved her extraordinary talent. But during the day the Earth stood still, she carried a weight no camera could capture. Neal was struggling privately. Personal relationships were falling apart. Her confidence wavered. Some mornings, just arriving on set, felt impossible. She later wrote about this period in her autobiography. Playing Helen Benson, a kind and brave single mother, became therapeutic. Helen's strength gave Neil something to hold on to, a character who faced impossible situations with grace. The bond between Neil and Michael Rennie developed naturally. Both actors felt somewhat like outsiders on set. Rennie was British in an American production. Neil was a serious actress in what some considered B-movie material. They supported each other through difficult days. Director Robert Wise noticed Neil's struggles, but handled them delicately. He gave her extra time between takes. He let her find her emotional center before rolling cameras. He never rushed or pressured. Some of Neil's best moments in the film came from real vulnerability. When Helen pleads for understanding, when she faces Gort alone, when she trusts a stranger from another world. These scenes carry authentic emotion because Neil was drawing from genuine pain. Years later, Neil credited this film with helping her survive a dark period. Acting saved her by giving her purpose. What audiences saw as performance was sometimes simply a woman holding on. The film's budget was considered dangerously low, nearly $1 million. That was the budget for The Day the Earth Stood Still. Today, that number sounds quaint. In 1951, it represented serious risk, but compared to other science fiction spectacles, the budget was actually modest. Studio executives worried. How could they create convincing alien technology, a massive flying saucer, a robot, and Washington landmarks on such limited funds? Director Robert Wise had experience stretching money. He had edited Citizen Kane years earlier. He understood how camera tricks and creative staging could substitute for expensive effects. He promised the studio he could deliver something remarkable within budget. His secret weapon was simplicity. Instead of constant special effects, Wise focused on suggestion. The saucer sits motionless for most of the film. Gort rarely moves. The alien technology stays mysterious precisely because showing it working would cost too much. This limitation became strength. Less spectacle meant more suspense. Audiences imagined horrors the budget couldn't afford to show. Their minds filled in gaps with worse things than any special effect could create. The film finished under budget. Studio executives were shocked. They had expected overruns and delays. Instead, Wise delivered a polished product with money to spare. When the film became a hit, other directors studied Wise's methods. How did he achieve so much with so little? The answer was discipline, knowing what to show, knowing what to hide, trusting audiences to participate. Limitations taught lessons that unlimited money never could. Sam Jaffe's casting caused political controversy. Sam Jaffe played Professor Jacob Barnhart, the brilliant scientist who helps Klaatu contact Earth's intellectuals. The character was clearly inspired by Albert Einstein. Same wild hair, same gentle wisdom, same faith in science over war. But casting Jaffe created problems nobody expected. During the early 1950s, Hollywood lived in fear of the blacklist. The House Un-American Activities Committee investigated supposed communist influence in movies. Actors, writers, and directors lost careers over suspected political beliefs. Sam Jaffe had attended some political meetings years earlier. He supported causes that conservatives called suspicious. When his casting was announced, pressure came immediately. Studio executives received threatening letters. Theater owners warned they might refuse to show the film. Right-wing commentators accused the production of hiring subversives. 20th Century Fox considered replacing Jaffe. The role hadn't been filmed yet. Finding another actor would delay production, but avoiding controversy might protect the investment. Director Robert Wise refused. He argued that Jaffe was the perfect actor for Barnhart. His gentle face, his intelligent eyes, his ability to project wisdom without arrogance. Replacing him would damage the film. After tense negotiations, the studio kept Jaffe, but they required him to stay quiet about politics during promotion. The scene where Earth stands still almost didn't work. The title promises it. The plot builds toward it. At the film's climax, Klaatu demonstrates his power by stopping all electricity on Earth for 30 minutes. Everything freezes. Everything goes silent. The world holds its breath. Creating this scene nearly gave the production team heart attacks. How do you show an entire planet standing still? The budget couldn't afford global footage. The technology couldn't create convincing worldwide effects. Director Robert Wise needed to suggest something enormous while showing something small. His solution was elegant. Instead of trying to depict everywhere, he focused on specific locations. Washington monuments without power. Factory machines grinding to a halt. Milk trucks stopping mid-delivery. Hospital generators, the only things still running. The editing made the sequence powerful. Quick cuts between different locations, each shot lasting only seconds. The accumulation created scope without expensive spectacle, but technical problems nearly ruined everything. For the scenes showing stopped vehicles, the production needed real streets filled with real cars that wouldn't move. Coordinating this with Washington traffic proved impossible. The city refused to shut down major roads for filming, so the crew cheated. They filmed early Sunday mornings when traffic was minimal. They used back streets instead of main thoroughfares. They angled cameras to avoid showing empty roads that should have been crowded. Some shots used miniatures. Tiny cars on tiny streets photographed to look life-sized. The model work wasn't perfect, but quick editing hid the flaws. Lock Martin's health suffered permanently. Playing Gort seemed like a simple job. Stand tall, move slowly, don't speak. Lock Martin thought he could handle it easily. The paycheck would help him more than being a doorman forever. He was wrong about how simple it would be. The Gort costume weighed over 80 pounds. Made from foam rubber and hardened fabric covered with metallic paint, it pressed down on Locke's already stressed spine. Each day of filming meant hours of carrying that weight. The heat inside the suit raised his body temperature dangerously. Locke experienced dizziness, nausea, and difficulty breathing. Medical staff intervened multiple times. The production kept him working as long as safely possible, then rushed him out of the costume to recover. After filming wrapped, Locke's physical problems continued. His back never fully recovered. The strain of those weeks showed up as chronic pain that followed him the rest of his life. He never became a movie star. The Day the Earth Stood Still remained his only significant role. He returned to working as a doorman after brief attempts at other acting jobs. His height, which had been his ticket to Hollywood, also contributed to health problems common among extremely tall people. Lock Martin died in 1959, only 8 years after the film's release. He was just 43 years old. Friends said the physical demands of playing Gort had weakened him. The robot everyone remembers was powered by a man who paid with his health. That silver monster cost more than audiences ever knew. The film was banned in several countries. America saw The Day the Earth Stood Still as a thought-provoking science fiction film. Other countries saw something more dangerous. During the Cold War, nations divided into opposing camps. The United States and its allies on one side, the Soviet Union and its allies on the other. Any film suggesting that international cooperation was better than military strength threatened this division. The Day the Earth Stood Still delivered exactly that message. Klaatu warns Earth that violence will lead to destruction. Only by working together can humanity survive. This sounded like propaganda to governments on both sides. Several countries banned the film outright. Others required extensive cuts before allowing screenings. Some removed all references to international cooperation. Others deleted scenes showing military failure. The Soviet Union refused to show the film for decades. Officially, they called it American propaganda. Unofficially, the message about peaceful cooperation made both superpowers uncomfortable because neither practiced what Klaatu preached. Even in countries where the film played freely, authorities watched audience reactions nervously. Would people start questioning their governments? Would they demand peace instead of preparing for war? The bans eventually lifted as the Cold War evolved. Today, the film screens worldwide without controversy. But for years, this simple story about an alien visitor was considered too dangerous to show. Ideas they tried to hide eventually spread anyway. They always do. The production nearly lost its lead actor to immigration problems. Michael Rennie was British. He wasn't an American citizen. Working in Hollywood required proper documentation. In 1951, Getting that documentation wasn't simple. Just weeks before filming began, immigration authorities flagged Rennie's paperwork. Something about his visa status raised questions. He faced possible deportation back to England before cameras ever rolled. The studio panicked. They had already announced Rennie as their star. Promotional materials featured his face. Contracts with theaters promised his presence. Lawyers worked frantically to solve the problem. Studios had connections in government. Favors were called in. Strings were pulled. The situation that might have stranded an ordinary person was resolved for a Hollywood leading man. But the stress affected Rennie. During those uncertain weeks, he couldn't focus on preparing for his role. He studied the script while wondering if he'd ever perform it. He rehearsed scenes while fearing deportation. Some actors might have let this anxiety show on screen. Rennie did the opposite. His calm, controlled performance partly came from exhausting himself with worry off camera. By the time filming began, he had no energy left for nervous habits. His portrayal of Klaatu as infinitely patient and serene drew from real experience. He had faced powerlessness. He had survived bureaucratic terror. He understood what it meant to be at the mercy of forces beyond control. Personal struggle created artistic truth. The film's anti-war message almost got the director blacklisted. Robert Wise had survived in Hollywood by being careful. He made films that entertained without challenging power. He avoided political controversy. He focused on craft. The Day the Earth Stood Still changed that. When the film's message became clear during production, whispers started. Conservative industry figures questioned Wise's loyalty. Was he promoting pacifism? Was he suggesting American military might couldn't protect them? Was he secretly sympathetic to un-American ideas? Wise received visits from people claiming to represent important interests. They asked questions about his beliefs. They suggested he might want to soften the film's message. They implied that his career depended on cooperation. He refused to compromise. His reasoning was simple. The film criticized all military solutions, not just American ones. Klaatu's warning applied to every nation equally. This wasn't anti-American. It was pro-human. After the film's release, Wise faced temporary difficulties. Certain producers avoided him. Certain projects fell through. The blacklist never officially touched him, but its shadow came close. He survived by continuing to work, by proving his value, by making films that succeeded despite political pressure. Eventually, the suspicion faded. Wise went on to direct West Side Story and The Sound of Music, becoming one of cinema's most celebrated figures. But he never forgot those threatening conversations. He never forgot how close success came to being silenced. Speaking truth costs something. Sometimes the bill comes later. The famous phrase was almost impossible to say. Klaatu barada nikto. Patricia Neal had to deliver these words at the film's most critical moment. Gort is about to destroy everything. Only this phrase can stop him. The fate of Earth depends on Helen Benson speaking 3 alien words correctly. Learning the phrase nearly broke Neal. Edmund North had created syllables that didn't follow any human language patterns. No Latin roots, no familiar sounds. The words sat strangely in the mouth. Neal practiced for days and kept stumbling. Director Robert Wise grew concerned. The scene required absolute conviction. Helen had to sound like she knew exactly what she was saying. Any hesitation would undermine the tension. Neal later described her solution. She stopped trying to understand the words. Instead, she focused on the emotion. Fear, desperation, love for her son, belief that Klaatu's mission was worthy. She let feeling carry her through sounds that made no sense. The actual filming required multiple takes. Neal kept changing emphasis. Sometimes she stressed Klaatu, sometimes barada, sometimes nikto. Wise eventually printed the take where her voice cracked slightly with genuine exhaustion. That crack made the scene powerful. You hear a real woman pushed to her limits, not an actress performing, a person surviving. After the film's success, fans constantly asked Neal to repeat the phrase. She could never say it exactly the same way twice. The perfect delivery came from that single moment of exhausted authenticity. Perfection happened because she stopped trying to be perfect. The film's influence extended beyond entertainment. Scientists noticed the day the Earth stood still immediately. not because of the special effects or performances, but because of what it suggested about communication. Klaatu's challenge was fundamental. How do you convince people who fear you? How do you deliver a message when everyone assumes you're the enemy? How do you prove peaceful intentions when your very presence causes panic? These questions applied beyond alien visitors. They applied to international relations, to diplomacy, to any situation where mistrust prevented understanding. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, political theorists referenced the film. The scenario became shorthand for communication problems. How would we respond to genuine peaceful contact? Would fear override reason? NASA scientists discussed the film when designing messages for spacecraft leaving the solar system. The golden records aboard the Voyager probes were influenced by Klaatu's attempt to speak to all humanity at once. If we ever send messages to other civilizations, how should they sound? Academic papers analyzed the film's implications. Philosophers debated Klaatu's ultimatum. Was threatening destruction to prevent destruction morally justified? The film raised questions about power and ethics that classrooms still discuss. What began as entertainment became education. A story about an alien visitor helped humanity think about itself. That wasn't the studio's intention, but art exceeds intentions. The true ending revealed humanity's greatest fear. Klaatu's final speech remains chilling 70 years later. Standing before his ship, addressing humanity's representatives, he delivers his ultimatum. The robot race he represents has eliminated war on their planets. Not through understanding, not through moral growth, through absolute enforcement. Robots like Gort have authority to destroy any civilization that threatens peace. Earth can join this interplanetary community, but only if humanity abandons violence. If we refuse, if we continue building weapons and fighting wars, Gort and his kind will reduce Earth to a burned cinder. This ending offered no comfort, no promise that humanity would choose wisely, no assurance that we possessed the wisdom to survive. Studio executives wanted changes, give audiences hope, show humanity agreeing to Klaatu's terms, end with celebration and optimism. Robert Wise refused. The ambiguous ending was the point. Klaatu leaves without knowing what will decide. We're left wondering too. The question hangs over the audience as they leave the theater. Will we choose peace? Can we overcome our violent nature? Do we deserve to survive? 70 years later, we still haven't answered. Wars continue. Weapons multiply. The warning remains unheeded. That was the truth they tried to hide. Not about aliens or robots, about ourselves. Some endings don't give answers. They give questions, and questions sometimes matter more. Chapters. The Day the Earth Stood Still arrived in theaters over 70 years ago. People watched it expecting flying saucers and ray guns. What they found was something deeper. A mirror reflecting humanity's most difficult questions. Are we capable of peace? Can we overcome the fears that drive us toward violence? When someone different arrives with a message we don't want to hear, will we listen or attack? The filmmakers faced their own impossible challenges. An actor who couldn't see or breathe. A budget that demanded creativity over spectacle. Political pressure that threatened careers. A message that powerful people wanted. They made the film anyway. They told the truth anyway. They asked the questions anyway. That's what great art does. It risks everything for something that matters. It speaks when speaking is dangerous. It shows us ourselves even when we'd rather look away. Klaatu left without knowing humanity's answer. The question still hangs in the air. Every war, every weapon, every act of violence or peace contributes to that answer. Maybe someday we'll deserve the stars. If you enjoy these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time.